Hello, today we are joined by Brett Sappington. He is the Senior Director of Research at Parks Associate. Thank you so much for joining us, Brett.
Glad to be here.
Brett, why don't you tell us what exactly is Parks Associates and what do you do there?
You bet. Parks Associates is a U.S.-based market research and consulting firm. We've been in the business for about 30 years, focused on entertainment, access services, and the Internet of Things.
Terrific. And can you tell us about some of the key ongoing projects that Parks does?
Sure. So we research a number of areas and output that research in a number of ways. So we do industry research, where we look at trends in the marketplace, technology trends, consumer trends, competitive trends, and then we write these reports that go into a lot of detail about how that happens and how it impacts all of our customers. We do quantitative research, so we do survey work and we go find out things quantitatively about consumers and what they're interested in. So those are the two big areas. The third would be strategy. We talk with companies about the marketplace and help them refine their market strategies to be able to be successful.
Terrific. Can you give us an example of an aha moment that one of your clients had when digging into some of the data or insights that you provided them that had a really big impact on their business? What exactly happened? What do they realize and do as a result?
Sure. We have a number of examples of success stories where companies have looked at our research and adapted their strategy or enhanced features, but one of my favorites actually is a company that ultimately didn't go to market. They had formulated a video service that they were interested in launching into the marketplace, and we looked at a number of elements about the service, the content that they had available, the competitors, what consumers were interested in, what they were interested in paying, and ultimately found that they really didn't have a place. There were so many competitors, so many other things going on in the market that the thing they had put together, it just didn't fit. And so for them, they ultimately opted to not go to market with that service, even though they had trialed the service and found somewhat less than favorable results. And so based on our research, they ultimately shuttered that project and decided to go in a different direction. And they were very appreciative. They would have spent millions and millions of dollars pursuing something that ultimately wasn't going to work out.
That sounds like a great aha moment to me.
It was, and actually they've continued to come back to us. You always worry that whenever you tell people what could be perceived as bad news, you worry about what their reaction's going to be, and it really is a testament to the decision making of this client that they're willing to take that, really trust the data, and trust that, and ultimately make a decision that worked out for them. They have actually gone in a different direction and have been very successful as a result. But again, not quite knowing how they're going to take the news is always a bit chancy.
One of your personal areas of expertise is over-the-top video. Mm-hmm. Can you give us a quick overview of the OTT media market and some of the big trends within it?
Absolutely. Huge marketplace. It's exploded over the past few years. Right now, there are 217 different over-the-top services.
Is that right?
Available in the U.S. market today, and that is well more than doubled over the past 3 or 4 years. So, very competitive marketplace. Really bifurcated. You have some really big players on one end and kind of everybody else after that, and so it's been a really interesting place as all of these services have tried to figure out what's their place in the market and how to be successful.
And so what are some of the big trends happening within this market?
You bet. So a few of the things that we're seeing, one is video services have gone from being very general to now they're focusing more on niches, on specific segments of consumers. So if you look at Netflix, if you look at Hulu, if you look at Amazon, they have general content that is interesting to everyone. Even services like HBO Now, Showtime, Stars, a few of those, again, it's general content, and they've been successful. But there have been many services that have tried to duplicate Netflix, to duplicate Hulu, and have not been successful. So what we see is you have these general services, and unless you're willing to compete head up against Netflix or against HBO or others, you really have to find your place. You have to be differentiated, and you have to be successful reaching that niche market. And so that's been a big key, is being able to look at the marketplace, find these niches, find content that works, find a business model that works. And whenever you have that, then you have a good recipe for success.
So as this over-the-top media market is exploding, what kind of challenges is that causing for your legacy tech, media, telecom companies?
Well, there are a number of challenges out there for the traditional companies. For one, many of them have evolved corporately in a very traditional sense, in a way that they know how to do business. And the new companies come in in a very different way. They understand the web, they understand cloud technologies, and they are innovating day to day. And so they really see data driving a lot of their organization in terms of how they make decisions and what they do. Traditional companies have had a lot of success over time, but what they find is internally there's a lot of resistance to moving too quickly, to making decisions that could be bad decisions, or perceived as bad decisions. And as a result, it makes it really difficult for them to operate at the speeds of some of these smaller companies and more nimble companies. More are moving in that direction, but it's a very different marketplace. If you're Google versus AT&T or Verizon or Comcast, those are big companies. They're full of smart people, but sometimes it's more difficult for them to move as quickly as some of these new online giants.
That makes a lot of sense. So, so now we're going to go into a segment that I love. We're going to call it Alex's Magic Elevator. I'm going to pretend to be somebody much more important than I actually am. And you're going to step into the elevator, and you're going to have 30 seconds with me, and you're going to give me some of your expertise advice as if I'm that person. Ready?
Okay.
So, elevator doors shut, open. I am Verizon CEO Hans Vestberg. You have 30 seconds with me. What are you going to tell me?
Very good. Verizon is a great company in terms of innovation. It's tried to build things by acquiring different companies. One thing I would say is Verizon has tried to get into the over-top video space. They're a pay TV provider. They've got to somehow get into the market. Verizon has looked into a number of video services. They actually have a lot that's online, but in terms of subscription services, they've just not gone there. They've not gone there to the scale of some of their direct competitors. And I think ultimately they're going to need to get off the fence and go and offer a service. They've opted to not offer an online pay TV service because there's lots of competition in that space. But ultimately I think they're going to need to do something to stake a claim in that market and to be successful.
Do you think we'll see them making a big buy?
I don't know if it'll be a buy or if it's going to be internally. I think they had Go90. That didn't work out. I'm not sure if that made them a bit gun shy and to actually go and do something. But I think ultimately they're going to need to. They're going to need to do something beyond. They have some great properties online, but I think they're going to need to do something in more of the TV, movie content space.
Okay, door shut. Next elevator, doors open. I am Samsung Consumer Electronics CEO Kim Hyun-suk.
Okay. Samsung, another very innovative company. They have really succeeded by having their own way of doing business, their own proprietary technologies in many ways. And that served them really well. I think that in some ways, in some industries, it works against them. They have their own operating system for smart TVs. They have a number of these things. And as I said, it helps them be successful in having all of Samsung products work together. But there are certain markets. I mentioned IoT earlier, which is another part of Parks Associates that looks at smart home and all of those areas. And in those areas, it's going to be very difficult for Samsung to do it on its own. And so being able to work to other standards and to be able to participate in those in a way that really opens up the Samsung ecosystem to allow it to be part of that. I think that's going to be important. Samsung has not, at least in the U.S., hasn't launched. They have their smart TVs. They've not done a streaming media player. Streaming media players, it's U.S. is the primary market for streaming media players with Apple TV, with Roku, with Fire TV, and those have been successful. Samsung has stayed with the smart TV. Really, streaming media players are a way to turn a dumb TV into a smart TV for under $100, and so that's an interesting business. I think Samsung is planning on smart TVs ultimately taking over worldwide, so they may be staying away from the low end, but that could be an interesting space. It's actually a bit surprising that Samsung hasn't gone there, hasn't had more success. But again, it may be because they're thinking globally with smart TVs, and streaming media players are mostly a North America centric product.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's not universally true. Apple TV is probably the leading streaming media player worldwide, but it's second place to Roku. And actually, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Fire TV is also doing well in North America. So again, Apple TV is doing great worldwide, but it's behind some others in the U.S. market.
Okay. Doors shut. Doors open. I am Netflix CEO Reed Hastings. You have 30 seconds with me. What are you going to tell me?
Okay, first, I want another season of Stranger Things. That would be awesome. And all of my children would thank me for saying that. Netflix is an interesting company. They do a lot right. Their reputation among consumers is ease of use is the top thing that they're rated for among consumers by a significant margin. In fact, compared to all of the other services people have, Netflix regularly rates out as being the easiest to use. Now, some of that's because so many people have it that it's somewhat set the bar on ease of use, but our data consistently shows that that's a big part of that. The other is availability on various platforms. Their original content has really moved them to where they have more control over what they're doing. I think the challenge they're running into is in international markets, and that's a difficult play because consumers in different countries, they want content that they like, and they want local content. And that gets expensive when you're looking at it on a global basis. Netflix is trying to create original content in different parts of the world, but the world is a really big place. There are hundreds of nations out there, and Netflix is trying to go to key nations and build content in those nations, build original content for those consumers, hoping that they will go international. And they've done some things like working in anime that has broad appeal. It's a niche, but that niche is consistent across multiple markets. So they're doing a number of things like that, but I think that ultimately for not just Netflix, but for all other OTT video services that are out there, I think you have to plan globally but execute locally in all of these markets. I think Netflix is working on that, but I think that's going to be the key for them to be successful long term.
Great. Well, if I ever bump into Reed, I will let him know.
Yeah, and let him know about Stranger Things.
I will do that. I'm also a Stranger Things fan,
Absolutely.
so I'll do that. So can you share with us some of Parks Associates' research priorities for the coming years?
Absolutely. There are a number of things that we're looking at. If we're looking in the entertainment space, we're looking at how money is changing hands and really how the economics of the entertainment world are really changing right now. That's a big issue for a number of companies, particularly for traditional players and the new players moving into the marketplace. They're interested in how that money is going to flow in the future. We're looking into live. It seems that live has had a bit of a renaissance recently. And it's not that, a lot of people look at live channels, linear channels, and they see it, viewership going down on many of those, but what we're seeing also is more and more sports and live channels are really going online. So we're seeing that and we're watching that. We're watching devices, everything from streaming media players to smart health devices and robotics and those areas. We're looking at cloud technologies. We're looking at artificial intelligence and machine learning. So we're really trying to cover the whole ecosystem to see what's going on, where it's all going, and how it's going to play out.
Terrific. Well, it sounds like some really interesting research priorities in the coming years, and we look forward to following what you and the rest of the team at Parks does.
Change is always fun. Looking forward to it.
It is. Thank you so much for coming in.
You bet.